Good morning, folks. We are back. I am your host, BKP, and you're watching BKP Politics on voiceofruralamerica.com. Now, I don't know if you have been following redistricting in Georgia. There's been some court battles, and they've had to take the eraser out and change congressional lines and put new maps up. But they are final. We have the maps in Georgia, and the new congressional maps are out. Running in the new 7th. I'm going to call it the new 7th. We'll talk about it in just a minute with our guest. But running in the new 7th, the current Congressman, Dr. Rich McCormick, from the old 6th District. We shall explain. Bring Dr. McCormick in, Congressman McCormick in. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. I've been trying to explain, and I said it nicely, to my audience and your constituents, because we have a strong viewership in your area. I've been trying to explain for the last 90 days all this redistricting and where the lines are. And I think you, Congressman, more than anyone, it seems like one day you were running in the 7th, then you're the congressman in the 6th. Now you're running in the 7th again.
And to make it worse, of course, there's 0% of the old 7th and the new 6th, or the new 7th, and there's 0% of the new or the old 6th and the new 6th. So there's absolutely no crossover. They did it basically, they renumbered it to give credit to the judge and follow every direction so that there wouldn't be challenges in court. But essentially what it did is it took my district, it dropped off Cobb, it dropped off Sugar Hill and Gwinnett, but it added Johns Creek in North Fulton and added West Hall and Lumpkin counties. So it became more conservative, but it's probably close to 80% of what we had previously. So it's not much different. It's just called something different. I know we had a lot of people panicking. They're like, oh, they're screwing you, blah, blah, blah. No, they actually made it a little bit more conservative. It's almost identical to what we had before, or very similar, I should say. It's just been renamed and to follow the court order as closely as possible.
Well, before we get into some of the issues of the day that we need to discuss, you're correct there. I think it's like 75% of the district you represent today was moved up into what is now being called the 7th, and the changes there is now you have you stretch all the way up into Lumpkin County, very red county in Georgia, and you got some Cherokee, and you've got Hall County and North Forsyth. So you're running for that re-election there, and I haven't heard of any other announced candidates or opponents. So we'll go with that. Let's start right into some of the things that are taking place. I mean, let's go with the border crisis first and foremost. How would you describe that? I describe it as an invasion on our border. I mean, and for our audience out here, the congressman has served, and you have traveled around the world, and you've been to many of our bases around the world. But I consider what's happening on the southern border as an invasion of our country. How do you see that, Congressman?
Very much so. I think there's armed people with with not only guns but drugs that kill hundreds of thousands of Americans, hundreds of thousands per year. Actually, about 110,000 last year. Every year it seems to go up. Now, of course, I think there's better ways to secure the drug dealing than fighting at the border. But the fact that it's coming across the border, the fact that you have criminals, armed criminals who are rapists, who are child traffickers. We lost 100,000. Get this, 100,000 children that have come across the border have disappeared that were in the custody of the United States government. That's insane. If your child, if you had your child disappear and they're in custody of the United States government, one child would be enough to ruffle the feathers of anybody in the United States. We're talking 100,000 children have disappeared. that were under the charge of the United States government. On top of that, you know that about 80% of the women coming across the border have been raped multiple times. The ones who haven't are usually the ones who can pay extra money to get the Cadillac service to come across the border. When they come across it, they don't have the money to pay up front. They're going to be in indentured servitude for about 8 to 13 years, paying off their jackals or their transporters back for their, basically it's going to be slavery. It's indentured servitude. So to think that it's good for these people or that it's good for America is ridiculous. Just in the last 3 months, this is how crazy it is. This is how much of an invasion it is. This is how much they're trying to change America. And when I say they, I mean the Democrats. Because quite frankly, the Democrats thought that these people were coming across the border to be future Republican voters. They would be standing on your desk right now, freaking out and upset and carrying around picket signs and talking about how we need to throw everybody out in Congress. We need to throw out the president. They would be absolutely going crazy. But they know that when you bring somebody who's low skilled, who cannot even have a job legally, that they're going to be absolutely reliant on the government, which makes them, by definition, basically into a socialist society, and they will vote for whoever gives them free stuff because that's the only way they can subsist. In the last 3 months, there's been more people come across the border into the United States and stay than there are in my entire congressional district. Take that, think about that. And it's unfunded. That means the entire congressional district that just came in the last 3 months has to be paid for everything they eat, all their housing, all their medical, and that includes if you have a baby, which costs, I think, probably $50,000 per pop. That's if nothing goes wrong, by the way. And by the way, if you come across the border, and I asked the border security when we just came back from the border, I asked them specifically, if somebody has a chronic illness or something that is going to need dialysis or congestive heart failure or anything that's chronic, they will take them to the hospital, and unless they stay with them, then they have to release them. Of course they're going to release them. They don't have enough people to even process these people, let alone turn them away. They take them to the hospital. They're released to the hospital to get their free health care for life. And I'm talking about dialysis, you're talking $1 million a year because they have to go to the ER to get their health care. And believe me, I know as an ER doctor, we probably had at a small hospital, you have at least 10 people like that. That's $10 million. In a large hospital, you could have 20, 30, 40 people per year that cost you this much money because they get sick, they get put in the ICU, they get dialysis, we have to nurse them back to health, we discharge them, they come back and have to be sick because they don't get dialysis unless they're sick. So this is what we're burdening our healthcare system with, and that's just for one person. Now think about when your kid is born here and the cost of birth, plus the education, plus everything else. We're not paying for this out of our taxes because we don't have enough taxes to pay for this. So what it does is it just increases the debt that much more. Your children are going to be paying interest for our sins. And that's what's driving me crazy. Because since Biden has been president of the United States in the last 3 years, we've had enough people come across the southern border to fill 13 entire congressional districts. Unfunded again. We have a zero vote margin anymore. We're at 218 voting members in the Republican caucus because Scalise is out for a month from a stem cell transplant. You have 3 special elections with McCarthy and Santos and Johnson, Bill Johnson. And so now we basically are dead even. We have 1 vote majority. And that's if everybody in the Republican votes the same. But we just had 13 congressional districts go across the border since Biden has been president. Tell me that's not by design. Tell me he's breaking the law for some other reason, because he's breaking the law to do this.
Well, let me say this. You've done a very good job of defining exactly what's going on and actually sharing things that I keep saying to my audience that you've really done a great job of. We've got to look at what this is costing the healthcare system and what this is costing taxpayers. It's not just a federal. I was talking to somebody the other day and they said, well, that's a federal problem. No. When they're in your area and they start going to your schools and start going to your hospitals, it's no longer just a federal problem. And something else you talked about, replacing your district, just the numbers alone. I did a full segment here one day and I put up major cities, Pittsburgh, across this country, that we've actually replaced entire cities with these people just coming across the border illegally. What do we do? Okay, so you really you did a good job of defining it. What do we do? Are we when I hear that we're trying to work out a deal for border funding and the Democrats are trying to make it sound like we can't do nothing about this because you the Republicans or we are holding up funding, which is absolutely ridiculous, but that's the way they want to put it. And then they want to put money for Israel and Ukraine as though if we don't do all of these things, we can't secure our southern border. What say you as far as securing the border? What action plan we need to do, and will Republicans stand together to get that action plan through?
Well, first of all, the border security, all the heads of border security, all the sheriffs, everybody's very clear. This doesn't even take new laws. The president could literally snap his fingers and it's fixed. It would take 20 minutes to fix the problem, which is basically enforce the laws we already have. We have a sovereign border. We have a remain in Mexico is kind of already a policy that's you cannot come from Venezuela, go through all these other countries and claim asylum here. You can't come from Honduras and claim asylum here. You're going through other countries that you're safe in. You're not allowed to come all the way to the United States. That's the law already. You can remain in Mexico. We don't have to make a new law for that. We have a border, which we can turn people away. That's already a law. We are a sovereign nation. Nothing's changed. Obama was excellent at deporting people who were here illegally and turning away people who came here illegally. What happened to the Democratic Party? Why did they all of a sudden decide that it was okay to break our laws to allow people in? Now, we did pass H.R. 2 7 months ago. 7 months ago, we passed it, which would basically complete the fence, which is already funded. It would make sure that the border patrol agents are not processing people in, but turning them away. It would make sure that we had electronic countermeasures and other ways to detect people who come in here, because quite frankly, we've had about 2 million people come across the border. We don't even know who they are. We don't know where they are. We don't know who they are, but we know that they're coming here probably with ill intent. We've got a record number of terrorists coming across the borders. We know that there's people in America that want to hurt Americans. Tell me that the president's number one responsibility is to protect the sovereignty and the safety of the United States citizens, and that's exactly what he's not doing. But H.R. 2 took care of all that. It's been sitting in the Senate with no passage, no possible idea of passage. We've been trying to link it to everything we've done, and I quite frankly, that's why I voted against all the CRs that we've had in recent times, which is coming up. I know that topic's coming up with you and I right now, but how can we not get H.R. 2 codified and actually executed? And that's what they're going to use as an excuse. Oh, look, we compromised with the Republicans, so we had to do H.R. 2, which you can do it, like I said, with the snap of your fingers right now. You don't need our permission to secure the border. It's the law. Now, it just codifies that and makes it easy for Biden to blame us for turning away illegal immigrants. But mark my words, and this is what worries me. And we talk about future elections. November is still a long ways off. They're going to cut the prime rate several times before then. The energy prices are going to come down because that's always comes down during presidential election years. Go look at history. So the price of energy is going to come down, the prime rate is going to come down, the economy is going to boom, and the southern border will be secured, but they'll say that's because of the compromise. So all the problems that Biden's getting criticized for now magically go away. Think about this. Think of how this affects elections. Think about how this is by design. And then into the future, if you bring 10 million voters that can't subsist without government assistance, who you think they're going to vote for? This is all by design for power. This should scare people.
All right, so let's move in that direction. The debt, 34 trillion and running. The clock is running rapidly. 34 trillion, unsustainable debt in this country. We were promised overall by Republicans that we would get, I think, 12 appropriations bills. We would start funding the government through no longer doing these massive omnibus bills and doing appropriations. You voted against last year, against raising the debt ceiling. You voted against that. We're working off CRs, continuing resolutions. And then this morning or yesterday, it's out there that our new speaker, Mike Johnson, has a $1.7 trillion compromise with Chuck Schumer. Where are we at, Congressman?
So, first of all, I want to give a little grace to Mike Johnson, who I think is probably one of the most conservative speakers we've ever had. Very humble guy. He's learning on the fly. With that said, I don't like the deal. It's basically 2023 spending levels, which I think is ridiculous. I don't think we've really tackled the debt at all since I've been here. And here's why. 71% of the budget is already on autopilot. You can't handle this. If you took all the rest of the non-discretionary or the discretionary spending away, which half of that is the military budget, and the military is not going to have, it cannot shrink right now. You have too many adversaries out there who would literally do harm to us and our allies if we were not strong. And strength is one of the things we have to realize as the United States. Our strength sustains the rest of the world, the free world. And so we're not going to cut the military. That leaves us with 11% of the budget. We've been haggling over 11% of the budget, and then we get excited when we save $100 million or $100 billion. $100 billion. And by the way, this deal I don't think even has $100 billion of savings. But $100 billion doesn't get us close to the $2 trillion deficit we have just this year alone. We're not taking debt seriously. And you can't take debt seriously unless you tackle Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. If you look at the amount of money that's spent just on healthcare, 26% of the budget, which next year will be more, by the way, percentage-wise. If you keep on increasing that, and by the way, I have ways to fix that, and I'm in the Doctors Caucus, which we're losing 4 members of the Doctors Caucus, including Drew Ferguson from Georgia, and some of the most senior members. We're losing a lot of corporate knowledge, and we're really in trouble because if our healthcare continues to escalate at an exponential rate like it is, and you have that parabolic curve of expense, it will bankrupt America. But we've done nothing substantial to tackle that. Now, we just did the Price Transparency Act, which will help maybe identify the problems, but not fix the problems necessarily. I actually was down with Georgia Tech just this last week talking to them about their AI and how we could use that for billing and streamline the process. The problem is that these PBMs, these insurance companies, actually make money off the inefficiencies that can be solved by AI. They will resist this with all their lobbying power because they know that it will rob them, quote unquote, of their huge profitability. 8 record straight quarters. But we are meanwhile spending more on healthcare than the 3rd largest GDP in the world. Let that sink in for a minute. We're probably around over $5 trillion per year on just healthcare. It's a huge, massive amount, and we don't get the bang for the buck because there's so many built-in inefficiencies that people are basically have their beak in the trough, trying to siphon off those trillions of dollars for their record profits, and we need to fix it.
All right, with a $1.7 trillion number out there, what say you? I mean, obviously, we've talked about the border. We've talked about unsustainable debt that we're dealing with here. We've talked about the medical cost. You've done a very good job explaining the direction that is going in. Totally wrong, actually. In this country, do we still send money to Ukraine? Because it's a very unpopular right now. It's very unpopular, and that's what I'm calling it. Do you still support sending money to Ukraine?
So let me kind of parse this out a little bit. If you cut off all foreign aid, including Ukraine, you still didn't solve the problem at all. You're still not even getting close. It's a pittance. It's nothing. So let's talk about what the real problem is here. It's the spending. REINS Act would be much more. If you're going to get a compromise, if you're going to get a CR, I'm not voting for it unless you give me something that has substantial savings. The President of the United States just gave away, tried to give away free education, quote unquote, to a bunch of rich people getting useless degrees that cost 5 times more than what we gave to Ukraine, in which we destroyed 50% of the Russian armor and 300,000 casualties. And by the way, a lot of money comes right back to the United States and stabilized our defense industry so it doesn't go up and down and up and down. And oh, by the way, it keeps our word. We made, and here's what we're going to talk about Ukraine. If you use the seized Russian assets, which is about 100 billion here in the United States, 330 billion worldwide, and if you talk about what we just passed in NATO, and this is my bill, by the way, and the oversight, which is my bill, with the IG and the oversight that we have on this. First of all, we have more accountability for the weapon systems and the money spent over there than we ever did in Afghanistan or Iraq, by far. I'm an Afghan veteran, as you know, and I know the inefficiencies of government. This is far more efficient and far more bang for the buck. And we gave our word, not just in the Budapest Accord, where we said, if you're invaded, and you gave up your nuclear arms, we will come to your aid. Do you tell your son, go out for the football team, but if it gets rough, just quit. Just walk off on your team. And I'll tell you, let me show you the next thing. NATO unanimously voted to support Ukraine. We are the major voter. Now, this is before I showed up in Congress. But we gave our word not once, but at least twice, that we're going to support a free nation from an autocracy. And if they fall, they contain 70% of Europe's grain. Where do you think that Russia's going to sell that to? Do you think they're going to sell it to Ukraine, or are they going to sell it to China? This has worldwide implications. If China says, oh, look, they'll walk away from their word, they don't care. Do you think that Taiwan, which produces 100% of our AI chips, 100% of the most revolutionary technology that we've ever seen in our lifetime, that will affect our entire economy, affect our entire future, you don't think they're paying attention to what we're doing? We are world leaders. Now, if you want globalism, stop being a world leader. Because right now, just in the Western Hemisphere, in Brazil, Venezuela, Colombia, Argentina until recently with Milei, but in Panama and Cuba, China has more influence than we do already. That's Western Hemisphere.
Yes.
That doesn't count Africa. That doesn't count the Far East. If you want China and Russia to dominate the world, you want globalism, go ahead. Withdraw from other people in the world and see what happens. See what happens. They will fall. They will fill the void. And by the way, this isn't anything new. There's never been a country who became isolationist, who didn't fall out of favor economically, militarily. They become inept. They become inconsequential. If you see China, they used to be the biggest world power in the world in the 15th century. They circumnavigated the world before Magellan. 1421. Read the book. It's an awesome book. And it talks about they had more technology, economy, wealth, everything that the world didn't have. And then they became isolationist. They withdrew from the rest of the world, and Japan took them over in about 2 years. A small little country named Japan took them over because they didn't matter anymore. Do we want to matter? Do we want to be global leaders, or do we want to be globalists?
I've got two really quick questions. I've got to get out for another guest, and I know you're busy, sir. Will you be supporting the $1.7 trillion deal that Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, is putting forward? Will you be supporting that, yes or no?
No, I don't think so. We're going to be talking about it today in conference, but it doesn't have enough. I need the REINS Act or HR2, something. Give me something other than the $10 billion savings or whatever. It's not enough. It's a drop in the bucket. Let's talk reality.
All right. Are you going to support? You're currently supporting Ron DeSantis for president. You've endorsed him. You're supporting him at this time. I understand political rumors, so I don't like going down that road because they're floating out that he's going to get out of the race. Are you going to back if DeSantis gets out and Trump becomes the nominee? Will you back Donald Trump and help get him elected?
Of course, yeah,
and support him?
I'm a conservative through and through. The reason that I think DeSantis is the best candidate is because he takes debt the most seriously. And debt is one of our biggest problems in America. If you want to talk about cutting debt, look at Ron DeSantis' record as governor, as a congressman, and his rhetoric and what he's done to tackle debt. He takes it seriously. He's not just somebody who pays it lip service. And I think one of the shortcomings of the Trump administration and the House, by the way, this isn't just Trump, the House and the Senate, when we had control of all three, we still had a massive deficit problem. We didn't take it seriously. You can have a great economy, but if you don't tackle that debt, it's going to come due for your children, and watch out. It will affect our economy eventually. So we have to take it serious. That's why I support Ron DeSantis, because of that debt. I am a true conservative. I'm not just a populist. I believe in conservative values, and I think that's what we need in our American government most of all.
Well, Congressman, let me tell you something. This has been a great update. And it's important to me for this audience to bring these kind of updates and clarification in the negative and the disaster that the Democrats are controlling right now and have this country in. So it's been a great update. I want to thank you for coming and being on the program. I do have to move to another guest, so I appreciate it. And I look forward to visiting you in the 6th and in the 7th.